Crowdfunding has fundamentally changed the way we make tabletop role-playing games. That has its ups and downs, but at the end of the day, it's never been easier to overcome your fears and get involved if you know how. Today, we're going to help you with that by chatting with experts who've succeeded and who've failed and are here to demystify the process. This panel is brought to you by Crowdfunder, the creator-friendly crowdfunding platform. Crowdfunder is free to use, dedicated to the success of its creators, and serious about positive social impact. Crowdfunder's Tabletop Nonstop 2024, a special spotlight on tabletop games, starts in February in conjunction with Zine Month. To learn more about Crowdfunder, please visit www.crowdfunder.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our discussion. Today, we're going to be talking about crowdfund your tabletop games without fear and dread. Expert advice for new game creators. I'm James Kerr, and I've got a fantastic panelists of cool people around me. I'm going to run around introducing everyone. I'll give you a little blurb, and then you can expand on that as I get around to you. So firstly, I've got Alan Bear. Is it Bear, Alan? Is that
it's
close
actually
enough?
Bar.
Bar.
Yeah.
By all means, correct me.
No,
Should have
it's
done
fine.
that before we hit record. Alan Barr.
Good.
He's an award-winning lead designer and founder of Gallant Knight Games, makers of Tiny D6. Alan has already written for Osprey Publishing, Steamforged Games, Octopath Publishing, and more. Good afternoon, Alan, or morning, or whatever time of day that anybody's watching this. Hello, Alan.
Hello.
You want to say a little? Do you want to give me your sting? What's
No,
Alan's business card pitch? Is that's
it? I don't know.
That's comprehensive. The rest of your life, forget about it.
I'm Alan. I make games.
Next, we have Dan Bronson Lowe, self-proclaimed dad creator from Almost Bedtime Theater, which has the aim of including families of all kinds to TTRPGs and creating content appropriate for players of all ages. Hello, Dan.
Hi there. Happy to be here.
Daniel, what's best for you?
Oh, Dan's good. I answer to both. But
okay, yeah. Great. And are your kids going to interrupt this recording as well as my kids?
I've got my fingers crossed.
Dollars to donuts? Okay. The last of our panelists is Steph Campbell. Steph runs ttrpgkids.com and values incorporating science and other educational elements into their games. Hello, Steph.
Hello.
And you're joining us from outer space, I see. So you've
I've got
the best reception out of any of us.
Yeah.
All right, so today we have a panel of experienced game creators who crowdfunded their projects. We're going to learn from their successes and failures, bemoan what they should have done differently, and take note of what to plan for the future. Okay, first off, why should we care? Why should we care about us? And that's probably a key thing. So I'm James Kerr. I'm from Radio James Games. I've led 3 crowdfunding projects. I've been a part of, I don't know, more of them. I'm about to publish my 8th tabletop role-playing game. I've been in the publishing business for 7-ish years. So that's why you should listen to me about crowdfunding a little bit. And let's run through everyone else and talk about who you are and why are you the right person to be here in the chair, so to speak. So Alan, let's start with you.
Yeah. So Gallant Knight Games has crowdfunded about 30 projects. A little bit more. I've been a consultant on over 100. All of them have funded. I've got about 500 titles to my name and been doing this for about 7 years. So
all of them have funded.
All of them at one. All of them at one.
That's like a fight career.
Yeah, I'm 101.
And Dan, how about you?
I'm at the other end of the spectrum. I have crowdfunded one, and it made it. So I think what I can offer is the viewpoint of someone who's brand new to the mix and who, what it was like attempting it for that first time, and the trials and tribulations I did and did not expect.
Excellent. Wonderful, wonderful and valuable. Thank you. Steph, how about you?
Yeah. So this summer, around the same time as Dan's crowdfunder was going on, I also did my first crowdfunder. Aside from that, though, for the past few years, I have been running, so there's TTRPG Kids. I've reviewed and featured a lot of games from other creators and have been working with them for making like kind of tips and tricks about running crowdfunders, self-publishing, giving advice, and seeing what they've done. So there was a lot of kind of tangential learning from other people's experiences that sort of led into the one that I did over the summer.
Now, that was a crowdfunder specifically, you say?
Yep.
Okay, because I mean, when I talk about crowdfunding, I'm talking about it in a pejorative sense.
Yeah.
And Alan, I assume not all of your experiences with crowdfunder as a platform, but more broadly with multiple funding. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, and we'll get into some of the differences there. I think that it's worthwhile, especially with the kind of mix of people we have. But let's talk about the kind of things that we're crowdfunding. We're putting on our tabletop role playing game hats here as publishers, but that is a broad spectrum in and of itself, right? Like sometimes that involves a lot of little bits and bobs and kibbles and meeples, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it can lean in one direction, and sometimes it doesn't. So, Alan, in your broad 100,
Yep.
how many? That's like 10 a year or something, isn't it?
Yeah. So
That's
I've
more than
yeah.
that. That's more than that. That's like one every 2 weeks.
When you're consulting, you don't have to do all the work though, so I can get a lot
right.
done quicker.
Oh, so you just like set them up and they knock them down? Is that the?
Yeah. So I ran my own. I ran about 50 on my own. But
That's still like 5 a year. That's insane. Okay, so talk to me about tabletop role playing games.
Eat.
No, I get it. But talk to me about tabletop role playing games specifically. What kind of range are we talking about here? Like, if anybody doesn't know Tiny D6, they can easily go and look it up. But give me your wheelhouse. What's your wheelhouse?
Yeah, we've done everything from zines to big slipcase 600-page behemoths. So
perfect.
Cards,
okay, that's
dice.
the full range. I guess the only range outside of that would be like a box set with multiple booklets and dice and tokens.
Yep, which we have not done yet, but we have one on the docket. So
yeah, I mean, and box technology's gotten so much better lately. And Dan, what was your what was your crowdfunder like?
It was
it's like Kleenex. I'm just used to using the word.
Right.
Yeah.
Mine was 3 trifold brochures, a card, and then it was within a boxed set. So for our first time out of the gate, I would have done myself some favors going perhaps with a zine.
Yeah, why did you do that? I mean, it's lovely. It's a lovely presentation, but like you would have had to source the box, right, from a printer just for boxes.
Oh, yeah.
And then you would have had to calculate the weight of the boxes in a shipping.
And bookmarks. It had bookmarks in it. And I also ultimately added a sticker for the crowdfunder as a special thing. It was one of those ideas where I started out, it was the brochures, and I felt there's no way I'm going to be able to ask people for the amount of money this is going to take to sell this thing and actually go somewhere with it and say, I want $15 for 3 sheets of paper. I just couldn't see it. But by the time it was done and those were packaged up with a few extras and it was in that box, it came out pretty slick, I think. I like to think it was worthwhile. And it became a real product that you could sell somebody.
Well, I think it's important for us to consider the fact that most people who are probably going to be watching this thinking about what are the woes for me to overcome in crowdfunding are going to be coming at it from probably less than your level of experience in doing that, Dan, and trying to figure out how to forge the path ahead on very little information. Because most tabletop role-playing game publishers are only going to publish 1 or 2 or maybe 3 things over their career, and that's great. I love the art that comes from that. I love the flash in the pan. So let's give people a bit of a sense of normal, because you didn't know what was was normal. Now you can say I should have just done a darn zine. Now you can say that, but you didn't realize you were punching high, and it's wonderful that you did it. Steph, tell me about yours.
Yeah, so I did do a darn zine. What I was actually crowdfunding was to support my website. So there's site costs and whatnot that I needed to cover. And so I took a digital game that I had previously published and turned it into a zine that I was able to sell on the crowdfunding page in order to raise funds for my website. So it was a 24-page tabletop RPG that was based on the Great British Baking Show.
Well, you raise a really provocative notion because the nature of crowdfunding is changing all the time. And
Mhm.
some people are crowdfunding things that have never existed before in any form. And some people crowdfund things that have previously existed in digital form. And some people are crowdfunding things that are going out as just print on demand codes for them to fulfill on their own. And some people are crowdfunding things that are going to have to be manufactured and put in little boxes and taped up and shipped individually. So it's a very strange place. Some people are crowdfunding in order to kickstart their business, and some people are just trying to fund a print run as a pre-order model. Time will tell whether we have the landscape for all of these things, but it leads us into, what does crowdfunding mean? What does it even mean anymore? Dan, I didn't ask you how your crowdfunder went, but I presume from how you were talking, it went well. You were above your mark.
Yeah, hit all the stretch goals. It was 250% funded, but the
250. Yeah.
the original target was $750. So, it's not like we're talking thousands, but well, actually you are. It was almost $2,000, which for my project achieved absolutely what I was after, which, as you say, it was to create a print run of something that already existed digitally. I really wanted to hold a copy in my hands and have my copy. And it was great to then be able also to share it and learn that process as well.
Okay, so Dan, we're talking print run of thing that already existed digitally. For Steph, we're talking print run of thing that already existed digitally. Alan, I assume your experience is more varied than that. Some of them are going to be like that, and some of them are going to be unique to the campaign.
Generally speaking, our business model has revolved around, we want to make this product, let's make the product by crowdfunding it, right? It might have been written, we will have some art, but like we haven't released it previously, generally speaking, in a different form. It's a little more, this is getting the initial print run and then
it's more of a traditional model, really.
Yeah.
But I wonder if digital release first and then crowdfunding isn't taking over in terms of a convention. But we'll have to see.
There's some benefits to both. I mean, I've done that. I've done both. We've had. Go ahead.
Well, here's the thing: like, you have an audience. You already have the audience, so you don't need to worry about trying to gather an audience before you announce a new product and a crowdfunding initiative to go along with it, right?
No. I absolutely still have to worry about that.
Okay, you absolutely still have to worry about that.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a fear that never goes away.
And the industry, I say the industry, the consumer base is so small and niche that reaching people is hard. I've been doing this for almost 10 years now, all these campaigns under my belt. And I still have people who will message me who are like in my Discord. They're on my Patreon where I'm talking about these things going, hey, I missed the campaign. I didn't hear about it.
You can never win. So it begs the question, at what point is something ready? At what point do you say, hey, I think I've got a great thing that deserves to be crowdfunded? Steph, I'd love to hear from you. At what point did you decide that your product was ready for crowdfunding?
Mm-hmm. So because I was trying to support like my website as my primary, and this was kind of a means to raise funds by providing some additional kind of service or object that people could get, a lot of it came out of need. So I had been publishing a lot of digital games. I have like dozens out there. And so I picked the one that was doing the best, and then I felt I could polish up the best. And that was kind of why I was ready. It was out of necessity. And with regards to like prepping it before the campaign, I had already seen it. It had been play tested. It had gotten into people's hands. I had gotten feedback for months before actually going to crowdfunding. And so I knew that it was something that people liked and that worked. So I knew that ahead of time. And then that was why I put that one as like my first foot forward for the campaign.
So in terms of editorial, or concept was done, but in terms of
Yeah.
editorial and art, it was like 3/4 of the way, or would you say most of the way?
I had it about 90% of the way there. I definitely did a lot of polishing, changing, like updating the layout, uh, changing the fonts, doing quite a bit with the theme in order to make it look more polished, and uh, making tweaks to the art so that way it actually came out with something that had uh, good coloration when it printed and whatnot. So there was quite a bit of work still to do. That was like a lot of small tweaks. It was kind of like the last 10% of work on it took about the same amount of time as
Well,
the
yeah,
first nine.
obviously the last 10% takes 90% of your effort, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, it shouldn't be too hard to convert this all from RGB into CMYK and lower the ink
Yeah.
limits to 240%. That's fine. That's what is that? An afternoon? No, that's good. All right. So Daniel, how about you? How far along was the project before you decided to Kickstarter it or to
I,
crowdfund it?
I'm one
Brandon's
of
supposed
those.
to be next again.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who really likes to be prepared. And so the anxiety levels were high enough. It was done. There was ultimately a little bit of cleanup, but it had been out for probably about 4 months digitally. Similar to what Steph was describing of my handful of games that I had available out there digitally, it was certainly the one that had the most traction. A lot of people expressed interest in it and were enjoying it. Got a little feedback, was doing that. There was a stretch goal that added basically another third to the game that I ended up doing, but it was something I'd given a lot of thought to already. So I'd say the base game was ready, ready to roll. It was just the stretch goal that had to be added.
So the base game that was already out there beforehand for 4 months or so, was that available for free, or were you separately selling that digitally?
I was selling that digitally for $5 on itch.io. I did go through taking advantage of that group that already had that game. So there was, I could kind of newsletter out and say, hey, the physical version's coming. I did offer those who already had it a coupon so that they could get a discount on the crowdfunder, so that if they wanted the physical version.
And Steph, how about you? Were you charging for the digital version before deciding
Yeah.
to go for the? Okay. All right.
Yep.
Because some people nowadays are doing, hey, here's my free quick start, which is basically the game without art or with minimal art. Here it is for free. And we haven't gotten to the point where I feel like that method has been tested yet fully. But Alan, it sounds like you're on, correct me here, but it sounds like you're on the other fence of this, which is a more traditional, hey, we've got these people lined up. We've got the solid idea. We know how this content's going to go, but we're going to do the work and put the money into it if this funds. So
generally speaking, the core product is done-ish, up through everything but edits. The writing's 90% done. The art's 90% done. We just got that last editing and then layout and then release when we run a Kickstarter.
So this represents for my own self, the last Kickstarter I did was for a martial arts game called Fight to Survive, role-playing martial arts meets heart. And it was done before launching because I knew that it's just me. So I would have to turn off my editorial brain and turn on my layout brain and turn on my marketing brain. And I'm glad I did it that way because those brains were dead. But is that the only way to do it? I do not think so. As different crowdfunding platforms kind of prioritize different processes, certainly if something's being funded on Kickstarter, the way it works is people think of it as a pre-order model and expect things to be ready beforehand. But is there still space for hey, I've got a great idea. Help me achieve this? Because this is in all four of our cases, this is a lot of upfront cost and this is a lot of upfront risk, especially when it comes to art, because art. I wonder if there isn't a better way, but there's a lot of different ways. So before launch, we talked about before launch, length and format of campaigns. I really want to know how long you guys were. So Alan, we'll do you last because you probably have 10 answers for me. But Dan, how long was your campaign?
It was 30 days.
Okay. Why did you go for 30 days?
I felt that anything shorter, I might be selling myself short. Plus, their crowdfunder was having a spotlight event at the same
Oh,
time that
okay.
was going for a month, and I wanted to take advantage of basically the entirety of that. You mentioned the marketing and promotional brains. That is not my forte, and I figured anything more than a month, I'm going to be burned out well before a month anyway. There's no reason to push it further than that.
More than a month. I was thinking less than a month because some people are doing 3 weeks, even 2 weeks now. But the problem is if you do a month, you take advantage of a whole cycle, right? But did you find there was a big dip in the middle?
Absolutely. I mean, actually, I would go so far as to say the vast majority of my contributors were really in the first couple of days, mostly the first day, and in the first couple of days, and then after that, it was a low flat line pretty much from there out. Um,
You
I
didn't get a
didn't.
burst in the last 24 hours?
It was just a few folks,
Okay.
and we can discuss more, but I think a lot of that has to do with the way things went for me as far as that marketing and promotion side of things,
Mhm.
and how I approached that. A lot was pre-launch.
So a lot of effort was put into marketing promotion before it ever saw launch.
Right. That
Yeah.
was where my emphasis was for, I would say, about a month and a half, 2 months before. I was pushing that here and there, and then during there was a little bit. I got some side help on that because I knew it was something I was going to need help with, and I think that helped things go. Uh, on a personal side, I was traveling for a couple of weeks there in the middle, so I kind of had to set it aside anyway. Um, but yeah, a lot of it was upfront for me.
And Steph, how about you?
Yeah, mine went for almost 2 months. I had it stretched out uh, because it was around that spotlight event. And I knew that I was going to be supporting and boosting a lot of other creators during the spotlight event because that's kind of what I do. So I wanted to kick mine off before it started, so that way I could get my initial kind of boost in there and then could kind of coast through the rest of the event while still helping others fund theirs.
And did you do any promotion before that 2 months started, or did
Yes.
you also did like another month before
Yeah, it
that?
was about a
Yeah.
month worth of uh, pretty consistent promotion to make sure that word was getting out. I was promoting on social media through email. I've got a newsletter that I'd been building up for the past couple of years. So there was a lot of different channels that I went through in order to promote ahead of time.
Would you do 2 months again? Would you suggest that as a route?
No,
No.
uh,
It's too
I
long?
It's a bit too long. There was a lot of stress involved with that because it's kind of like that slump in the middle. It just sort of stretched that out longer and longer. So that was definitely one of my lessons learned. I have another one coming up soon, and that one's going to be 3 to 4 weeks. So kind of taking some lessons learned from that and concise, making it a little more concise.
So most of your backing was done, I assume, in the first 48-hour period?
Yeah, I believe it was 60% or over 60% in the first couple days. It kind of coasted and slowly creeped up there. And then there was a little bit of a jump towards the end. I
Okay.
had some other things going on. There was like a couple announcements that came out that helped me out in the middle. But uh, if it weren't for that, it would have been even slower. And I would have been really pushing at the end to get it through. So,
So for me, my last campaign ran a month. I was promoting it for about a month before the campaign. I spent most of my advertising budget in the month before it launched because I didn't have a mailing list to go on. So I was trying to get it out there as much as I possibly could. Um, I had only 50% funded in the first 24 hours, which was met with quite a bit of doom and gloom in the press. They told me it wasn't going to fund because I didn't fund it in the first 24 hours. But I did not have a plateau because I planned all of my marketing and podcast and everything appearances in the middle of the well so that it would keep a flat line. And it funded 150%, I think. So not like, smashing itself, but like it ended up funding fine. Alan, I'd love to hear what stories you want to pick out of what you've done about this. So how long, like, talk to me about the length of campaign, and talk to me about how much promotion you feel you had to do before the campaign.
Sure. So on my first campaign back in 2015, 16-ish, I ran it for roughly 30 days. And I did promotion in advance for a while. I wouldn't call it extensive promotion, but Facebook page, talking about it, stuff like that. And after that first campaign, started building a mailing list and leveraging that. Now I won't run a campaign over 21 days. It's not there's no gain. Like I've done my previous job was data analytics and software. So I crunched the numbers and I was like, there's 21 days gets me the same funding level as 30 days, generally speaking. And if it doesn't, well, that's something I couldn't have accounted for. Right. So generally 21 days, but I always because for those of you not in the US, generally people who live in the US get paid on a every other week cycle. And I always try to schedule my campaigns so I hit both pay periods. Try not to only have one pay period occur during my campaign.
Speaking from ignorance, because I'm not in the US, but couldn't anybody's pay period be any given Friday?
So a significant portion of the US operates on a 15th and the end of the month pay date. They get paid twice a month, on the 15th and the last day of the month.
So you want to make sure to hit people when they've got their wallet full? Is that the...
I try to give them 2 opportunities to have spare income to support my stuff. Because I know sometimes things can be tight. And if I limit that, then I am, unfairly limiting them too, right? But so that's one of the things I always check is like, and sometimes I can't do it because of timing or just scheduling or whatever, but as much as possible, I try to arrange it so, there's roughly 2 paydays landing in each project. And unless I'm only running a 1-week project, which I've done in that case, then it's just throwing eggs at the wall and hoping something.
How did the 1 week go?
Good. The goal was $1. And so I funded by a ton. Like the math is really impressive.
Wait a second, 100 campaigns, and you've got ones in there that are
only one. It was my first zine quest. Okay. And so I did the holding myself.
What do people get for $1? For $1, you think of an idea for a zine?
No, I think I like a 60-page zine.
Oh. All right, that's wonderful.
I had never done layout before, and so I laid the whole thing out myself for the first time to teach myself layout. And so that was one of the things I was like, it's going to be pretty garbage looking. So
I think having it
feel bad taking too much money. So here's $1. I'll give you $1, and you can have this glorified Word document.
Well, having the tenacity to expand skill sets, I think, is an important part of being an indie publisher.
Absolutely.
Anytime you can get out of, you can take on something, it means you don't have to pay somebody. All right, so I've talked a bit loosely about, we've got Crowdfunder, who, we're happy to be here because of Crowdfunder. We got Crowdfunder. Kickstarter's the elephant in the room. There's BackerKit is being more and more aggressive lately. We've got GameFound, which is waned a little. We've got some other crowdfunding platforms that are popping up. My experience has been with Kickstarter, and I haven't actually done a crowdfunder yet. I will be doing one for Tabletop Nonstop in 2024 in February. But let's talk about your experiences with the mediums and what's the difference? What do they mean? And is there a difference between Crowdfunder and Kickstarter and BackerKit? Do they have differences? Should they have a different approach? Does the things we say about one not translate to another? I think that's relevant territory. So Daniel, you had a one crowdfunding campaign, and that was just on Crowdfunder. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. And Steph, also yours was on Crowdfunder?
Yep.
Okay. Alan, so I'm going to tackle you head on. Different platforms.
Yes.
What does it mean?
Yeah. So the bulk of ours are on Kickstarter, though I have ran 3 or 4 on Crowdfunder, 1 on BackerKit. We were one of their beta launches. And I have also done GameFound and Game on Tabletop, as well as our own crowdfunding platform through our web store. So tried the full spread here as much as possible. I mean, there's drawbacks and benefits to both. Kickstarter's biggest benefit is the innate built-in algorithm for marketing. You get a lot of passive eyes on your project that you maybe wouldn't reach normally. Conversely, the drawback for all the other platforms is to a degree that, right? You have to work a lot harder at marketing to get eyes on your project because that algorithm doesn't exist in the same really powerful way that Kickstarter has, right?
Now I'll interrupt a little bit. Did you get picked as a Kickstarter? We love this game top pick.
My current project did actually, and that is the first game I have ever done that has achieved that.
And do you find that led to a significant uptick in traffic?
No.
Okay, because I did not find that general eyes from Kickstarter was worth a darn for my campaign. Then most of the numbers that came in were coming in because I was hitting the streets and getting
Sure.
people and targeted ads and whatever else. And if you have to do all that promotion anyway, the platform becomes less material. And then for me, it becomes more about working with cool people.
Right.
And myself, I'm Canadian, so our castle compliance laws are very strict about how I gather a mailing list. And Crowdfunder is the only platform that will gather a mailing list under castle compliance, because anything Kickstarter gives me, I have to throw in the bin. I can't actually use it because they had them, people sign off to give their name to Kickstarter. The castle compliance doesn't transfer. So Crowdfunder becomes incredibly attractive to me because I'm like, well, I can build an audience. Every single campaign, I can build more and more and more of an audience. That's wonderful. And if I'm going to be doing all this marketing promotion anyway, then let's have at it. Now,
Sorry,
go ahead.
I do want to touch back on what real fast about the passive marketing.
Yeah.
So I have not had a lot of success with the projects we love tag. I've only had it, I think, on my current game, and then the one previously, Lasting Quest, got it too. Sorry. So I've had it twice. And I haven't noticed a massive influx from that. But what I have noticed is that when there are a lot of third-party aggregate sites that only troll Kickstarter for data, doing these news sites and reviews and this data collation, and that is a pretty significant passive eyes on your thing that is hard to track, because these websites are kind of collating this data out there for people who might be interested, sort of news blogs, etc. So, there are a lot of other benefits, and Kickstarter has a really great, and most of the platforms do, BackerKit does this, Crowdfunding does this, they have a kind of an analytics backend where you can see, and especially if you build your links in advance, you can actually track who's coming in through what link and how they're being notified.
Okay, but crunching the numbers, couldn't you get the same result or a similar result just from like emailing EN World and saying, I've got to include me on your roster, and then it goes out from there?
No. I mean, there's no guarantee they'll include you. There's only limited space.
You want to appeal to a scoop. So we're talking about, I don't think we have time to get into best SEO practices, but you want to get picked up by these scoops, is what you're saying.
What I am saying is, if you can target a segment of an audience that will spend, the 99% of them will back your stuff, or you can target a bigger audience where only 1% will back, oftentimes that 99%, especially in tabletop RPGs, is more effective. Right. So being able to offload the passive work to tools that you don't have to interact with is much easier, because you can focus on the important marketing, which is that hitting the streets, running the Facebook ads, etc.
Conversely, our audience are all a bunch of nerds, and they have a pretty good understanding of the different platforms. And I don't know anybody, I've never met anybody who said, oh, I will only back Kickstarter because I trust Kickstarter. Because if you're backing Kickstarter, you probably also have a BackerKit account, which means the genie is out of the bottle on multiple crowdfunding platforms. And people are not, in my experience, resistant to signing up for any multitude of things, so long as they have a fairly good upstanding reputation. So lessons learned. Let's see if we can wrap this up in about 5 minutes, and if as best as we can. Lessons learned. We got a bunch of lessons from Alan. Thank you. Daniel, what lesson are you taking away from your crowdfunding experience?
I would say the big thing I came up with was realizing you don't have to crowdfund something that's like 20 grand. I mean, you can crowdfund small stuff. To Alan's point, it's $1. That's all I'm asking for. So go ahead, start small, do a little thing, get just to kind of dip your toes in it, see what it's like. And maybe not something that has multiple components that have to be sourced from various places and then assembled yourself before you can send them on. It's doable, but it may not be the best first go.
Well, and you're talking start small. You released digitally first. A couple months
True.
later, you started with a small crowdfunder, and then you were able to scale what you were doing. Like maybe you bit off more than you could. Well, you certainly chewed it in the end.
Managed to chew it, yes.
But if there's a theme to this whole thing, I come from a traditional publishing background where what you had to do is go to the big city and find somebody wealthy and beg them for money and then get the money from them. And then that's how you published. And then you hope that it sold. Crowdfunding is often painted as this horrible, stressful thing, like my month of hell, et cetera, et cetera. But you know what? It's a lot less stressful than begging a rich person for money and then hoping that it sells. And especially, Dan, you say start small. Yeah, you can sell your digital product. You can see that there's an audience. You can get jazzed about the fact that other people like it. And then you can ramp it up and ramp it up and ramp it up. And you can do a first run with a small target. And then you can come back a year later and do a second printing because goodness knows Magpie is doing it. And everyone else, all the other publishers are not afraid to come back for a second printing 1 year later. So, and if that's the way things are going to move, it's safer and safer and safer for creators. Even though we talked about having to come up with a whole bunch of editorial and art before the thing went out. I'm not sure that's the only way to do it, but that's one way to do it. Steph, lessons learned. What would you say you've learned from your crowdfunding experience?
Aside from going for a little bit shorter funding period, I would say that my biggest lesson learned is that I should not have waited so long. So I had all these games sitting on deck for, I think it was like 2.5 years that I could have jumped in with. And it ended up actually being a really good experience. And that satisfaction of having a game in your hand, seeing people get excited about it, it makes a big difference. And then it's also something that can fund my livelihood now. So I really should not have waited so long. I wish I had done it like a year or so earlier. That's kind of the biggest thing is, be willing to take the leap. Maybe, start out small, do a few $100s for your crowdfunding campaign as your target for the first time, see how it works, work out the kinks with that, and then scale up to something bigger afterwards. Yeah.
Well, that's a theme in our industry, isn't it? Every time I go to a convention, I have someone telling me, "Oh, I've been watching Twitch streams for 5 years and never played a game before, and I'm so nervous to be here." And then they play something and say, "I wish I'd started years ago. I wish I'd made the leap years ago." I think we can take the same lesson from crowdfunding. It's easier than you think it is. It's not nearly as scary as you think it is, and you can do it too. All right. Where can people learn more about you? I want to shamelessly plug your stuff so that people can be like, "Hey, that person was really cool. I want to go and buy that thing they were talking about." Because that's a great opportunity. And I think we, in this industry, in tabletop role-playing game publishing, don't always shill ourselves as much as we should. Daniel, talk to me about your things. Where can I get them? Where can I find them? Where can I buy them?
The best repository for links is bio.link/almostbedtimetheater. That will point you to podcast episodes, my itch.io page with the various games, whatever social media I'm attempting at the time. That's where you go to get started.
Is Almost Bedtime Theater have hyphens or is it all one word?
For that link, it's all one word.
Okay. All right. And we'll see if we can get a link in the description here so that people can learn more about you. And
Thanks.
Steph, where do people go to learn more about you and your website and by extension, your games?
Yep. So it's all attached to ttrpgkids.com. All like one big word, I guess. If you go there, there's a whole bunch of articles about like tips and tricks for running tabletop RPGs with kids. There's reviews of other people's works. I feature crowdfunding campaigns on there as they're coming up, so you can kind of find kid-friendly tabletop RPGs from other creators. And mine are listed in there under, I think it's games, and then games by TTRPG Kids. So
Did you go TTRPG because you were sick of trying to justify RPG as not being a video game?
yes, that was a big part of it. It's TTRPG Kids, just to be like really specific.
Yeah.
I cover a lot of indie games, so Dungeons and Dragons is on there, but there's also a ton of indie TTRPGs.
Dungeons and what? Sorry, I've never heard of them.
Yeah. I wanted it to be like,
Oh, is that the one based on that movie?
Yeah.
I always thought they should make a role. Yeah, okay. Alan, where would you want to direct people to find out more
Gallant Night
about
Games? GallantNightGames.com is certainly the best place to go. We're on Facebook under Gallant Night Games. We're on Twitter and Blue Sky under Gallant Night Games. You can get our stuff at game stores or on Amazon or from our web store. So Director RPG.
Okay. And I'm James Kerr from Radio James Games. You can learn more about me at www.radiojamesgames.com. All right. Anybody have any last words you want to send out into the ether before we sign off for this episode? No, we're good. Okay. All right. The point is crowdfunding, not as difficult as you think it is, not as scary as you think it is, especially if you partner with somebody like crowdfunder who is willing to actually talk to you. And the whole experience can be pretty seamless. I'd like to thank my guests for joining me today. Alan from Gallant Night Games, Dan from Almost Bedtime Theater, and Steph from TTRPGkids.com. Today we discussed how to crowdfund your TTRPG without fear. Stay tuned for the second part of this series. You funded your game, now what? A discussion of printing, fulfillment, and communications. I'm James Kerr, and on behalf of crowdfunder.com, thank you for listening. This panel is brought to you by Crowdfunder, the creator-friendly crowdfunding platform. Crowdfunder is free to use, dedicated to the success of its creators, and serious about positive social impact. Crowdfunder's Tabletop Nonstop 2024, a special spotlight on tabletop games, starts in February in conjunction with Zine Month. To learn more about Crowdfunder, please visit crowdfunder.com.